Bum, 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 Mr. Stevie's Tall Toy Tales. I have that down pat now. I'm never going to tongue twist that ever again. Episode 11 of Mr. Stevie's Tall Toy Tales is going to be a little bit of a selfish one. I've got to do a little bit of rejigging in my shelves, my 70s and 80s stuff, and I thought, why don't you come along with me and give you some hints and tips on how I display things. This isn't live, it's going to be pre-recorded, but otherwise you'll be sitting with me for like an hour and a half, which I don't want to put you through. So let's take a look. So first things first, I use IKEA's Detolf cabinets for my collection, which sadly I've just heard that they've discontinued. What the hell am I going to do now? My wife will be happy because she'll say, well, you can't have any more toys for your collection then, but I will find a way. This is Misty. Say hi, Misty. And disappearing upstairs is Twiglet. Twiggy? Yeah, okay, screw you. Now the Detolf is divided into 4 squares, cubes, and I try and allocate each cube to a certain era or thematic. So here I have my sort of preschool era, and then if I come down, I have a very specific ET shelf. So these are individually called my memory shelves. So if you hear me say memory shelves, I mean one of those square shelves. I essentially have 2 approaches that I take. One I call bleachers, which is usually filled with these stepped acrylics, and they just have figures in. So I use that for my Marvel Legends Retro, and I also use it for my Star Wars figures. The other method I use I call installation, which is using different risers of different shapes, widths and heights, also making sure that I put things down on the ground. So it's more sort of museum-like, I think. But so installation, so we have bleachers and installations. So today we're going to look at this Detolf, which at the top we've got Superman, which is more of an installation, down to Indiana Jones, which again is like an installation. But the bottom 2 are set up as bleachers, where I've got my Tron, my A-Team, my Dukes of Hazzard, and then I've got my sort of miscellaneous 70s, 80s. I've got some Star Trek and Black Hole and all those kind of things. So I'm going to change these 2 into more of an installation because I've got a load more stuff that I need to put in there. Before we do that, let's get all this stuff out. Now let's take a pause there. Mego. Most of you will be aware that Megos never have pins on the bottom of their feet, right? And the fact that they're O-rings, they get quite floppy over time, right? So if you try and stand a Mego up on their own without any pins in their feet to put on little stands, it's pretty difficult. What I tend to do, especially when I'm using bleachers, is that I actually put a little bit of sticky wax on their butts and attach them to the side of the vertical part of the bleacher. So if I pull that off, you can see it's just got a little bit of sticky wax, and that just keeps them all nice and connected, so they stand up and don't fall over. So I got everything out of the memory shelves, and all the stuff is on the floor. So in addition to all my stuff that you saw, I want to also include some Gremlins, and I've got some extra Tron stuff in there as well. And I've got a variety of steps and risers here. A lot of you ask me, Steve, where do you get your risers from, your steps and all that? And well, I can't tell you, it's a trade secret. Actually, there's no trade secret. I literally go into Amazon and I put in usually acrylic steps or jewelry display risers or stuff like that, and there are hundreds of different variations you can get. So there's no trade secret. Just grab on Amazon and give it a search. Now these risers are invaluable to your displays. They will create space where there isn't any space, because the Detolfs basically are just one big cube, which, you know, the difficulty is finding stuff to put in that fills the height. It's very important to be able to get height into your displays, okay? So, you know, get high steps, get low steps, get low, narrow things, get medium things. Don't be afraid to turn them on their end, because you can put something up here and then put something underneath. Like, use and abuse these things. You know, you buy them, you better get some use out of them. Another vital piece of equipment that you're going to want are stands. And again, a lot of people ask me, where do you get your stands? Now, I do have a brand that I usually go to, and it's called ProTech. And there are 2 variations of these stands. They look identical, but the pegs are actually thicker and thinner, depending on whether you've got vintage, which I think is wider, and modern, which I think is thinner. I'll hold it up like that. Yeah, you can see. They are slightly different. Now, it all depends on the figure itself, which in turn depends on how it was cooled and how it was sculpted, but ProTech do these 2 variants, and usually you can cover all figures with this size, which I think are 2-inch. Work very, very well for most cases, either 3 3/4 inch or 6-inch. So I've got everything out of there, all on the floor, ready to reorganize. The big question I've got is, how am I going to organize it? How am I going to find my little pockets of Gremlins, of Tron, of A-Team and Star Trek? And this is the bit that takes a while. This is the bit that takes a long time, trial and error, putting things in, arranging them, taking things out, trying different risers, trying different stands, etc., etc. This is the bit that if you were with me 100% live, you would get dead bored in about 10 minutes. But we're going to record what I'm doing. I'll stick it on the time lapse so you can see the sort of ins and outs and kind of how I change my mind. And hopefully I'll arrive at something that looks good and I'll bring you back and we can take a look at it. Okay? So here's my first pass at blocking these shelves. Very rough, just plonking things down and trying to think of thematics. Here I'm going to make it all about space. I've got my Star Trek, my Tron and my Buck Rogers and my Black Hole. So there's a kind of consistency with sort of sci-fi space stuff. While I've put a lot of height here, you don't want to put too much height at the bottom, because when you stand up, and I know I'm 6'3", but if I bring down to that, when you view things, you're not going to get much of height here. The angle is too acute. So don't go too high on the bottom shelves. Quick little note on this one, Microman is super floppy, so I just put a little bit of sticky wax on his shoulder and attached him to his, I don't know what you call it, coffin thing. Just allows him to stand way easier. Remember, as you're displaying, it's all about choices. What fits in where, what doesn't, how much space do you actually want to allocate to something. Like in this instance, I wanted to get all the gizmos on these two levels. So I've got this little one who's cute, but I've got him in the car already. So I made a decision, he doesn't get displayed. I moved things around and I moved him slightly over to the right so I could fit this one in, but to do so I had to lift his arm up, so I've made him a pose. So that's when you get to a point where it's like, hey, remember, the character should either be looking at you, the viewer, or interacting with another character. I don't mind putting them off, sort of turning them sideways a little bit, but he's kind of looking over there. He's looking at us. There, he's kind of like looking at him. He's looking at him, and he's kind of like driving off. So there's a compositional aspect to it, which just creates a little bit of interest. It's not a massive story, but it's just a nice way of displaying, and I hope that makes sense. It does make sense to me anyway. Ideally, the entire collection will have those little moments where characters are looking at you or looking at each other. I don't have many examples. Can I find some examples? So here, you know, I've got Sala looking at Indy, Indy's looking at the viewer, at you. So really important to consider. It doesn't always work, but it's what you should really strive for. So I've finished my bottom shelf installation. It's in a menagerie of characters from sort of 70s and 80s. They're grouped in little sections. My Gizmo, my Gremlins, Dukes of Hazzard, an A-Team, a couple of Lone Rangers in the back there, but it arranges a reasonably nice V shape in the bottom, which, you know, I've got some space, so you know what, it might just need a little bit of a finish off with a little Gizmo who I took out of there, but it's okay just to put a little character. You need a focal point, so that creates the bottom shelf. Not bad, pretty pleased. Now to arrange my sci-fi shelf, which you can see just behind me, just laying out my Star Trek, and I'm kind of working in Tron. Now, it is very important when you've got cards, and I don't have many cards because you know I open them, right? That keep nice protected. So I often grab one of these little acrylic protection cases. Again, there is no brand I particularly go for. You just slide them in nice and easily, and you put on the bottom, and then you've got a nice protective case, and also, you know, it stands very smoothly and succinctly and stably. So make sure you grab a few of these as well, and you can also use them as nice sort of, you can even put things on top if you want to. Right, so here's the thing. I've got these Tron figures from Diamond Select, which I really like the style of, but the plastic is quite brittle and quite hard and not very giving. So when I'm trying to place them on here, the hole's the right size, but there's not much flex in the foot to be able to wrap around the pin, so it's really difficult to get them in. Hot water, stick them in a bag so they don't get wet. Just dangle their feet, hopefully displacement doesn't make it spill everywhere. Just stick them in the water for a little bit. What's going to happen is that the plastic on their legs and their feet that are in the hot water are going to soften up a bit, which hopefully when I put them back onto the pins, they'll wrap and envelop them really nicely and securely. And then as they cool down, they'll tighten around and hopefully they'll never fall off their stands. Right, I've left that a couple of minutes. Let's see how they soften up. So I'll grab one. I don't know why I'm shaking it. He's not going to be wet. And hopefully he's softened up a little bit, that I can now get him onto that stand. And as he cools down, he'll shrink back to wrap around it. Yeah, much better. There. Let them cool down and they will shrink tight and hopefully never come off their stands. And that is what happens. Can't get away from it, especially on those Mego toys. You will have a fall down, a domino effect. My intention at the moment is to really kind of rip this whole thing apart and throw it around the room, but I'm not going to do that. You have to take a deep breath, realize how beautiful it's going to look at the end, and get back and fix it. Along with the frustrating moments where things fall over, there are also moments of sheer pleasure where you get a riser and it just fits perfectly on. Just needed to bring up Tron and Sark just a little bit to make that feel a little bit more balanced. So I've fixed this. That was fun. And I got my Star Trek, got my Buck Rogers, I got my Black Hole, I got a little bit of, Siskay, Flash Gordon and Ming the Merciless, and Vincent, my pride and joy. I love this Vincent. And there's nothing wrong with bringing out different characters and mixing them. I think Vincent and Tweaky would get on really well. I'm actually leaving a space there for the Daggett from Battlestar Galactica. What's his name? Is it Muffet? Muffet? The Daggett? Whatever. So there's a nice little space there. So there's my space and sci-fi shelf. All nice, and I like it. I like it. I like it better than that one. Oh, hang on. Hang on. This is another annoying thing. You finish your shelf. My joints. And then, where is it? Yeah. You realise you've got something else. I've got something else to go in there now. I've got to make that fit. Right. It's going to be the quickest unboxing video ever. Where is it? There we go. Okay. So I've got the Draconian Guard. It's not really card, he just stuck it on, but no, it's not card. Oh, it's stapled. But hopefully this will be a good condition. Pretty floppy, but now I've got to get him in there. So I decided to put the Draconian Guard on the Black Hole row. I'm sure they won't mind. They look very similar and in tune, don't they? And I move Maximilian forward with Vincent and Tweaky. So 2 hours later, we've finished the shelves. As you can see, I have rearranged the sci-fi space shelf, and then further down below I've got the, I don't know what you want to call it, odds and sods. Now what usually happens is that I want to expand the Gremlins and expand the A-Team, expand Crystar and Dukes of Hazzard and give them shelves of their own, but I'm kind of running out of space, but I'm sure I'll find some more space. Oh, and let's not forget, I get these wicked signs from D. Blake's Makes to go on the outside. So there we are. So I hope you enjoyed that episode of Mr. Stevie's Tall Toy Tales. It's a different one this week, wasn't it? I hope you picked up a few little hints and tips. We spoke about stands and the different pins for vintage and modern. We spoke about risers and steps and where to get them from. We spoke about the beauty and the wonder of sticky wax. We spoke about composition, about arranging diagonally and getting the right heights and making sure you've got heights there, but not too high if you're on a low shelf because you can't see it. We also spoke about composition, about having characters and figures looking at you, the viewer, or looking at other characters to create a little bit of a narrative. Simple stuff. The one thing I am certain is as soon as I finish all of those shelves, I instantly look at them and dislike them and want to change them. But that is part of the beauty of collecting. It is the ability to curate your collection and change it on a whim because we are in control. Right. Bugger off and have a great week, and I will see you sometime soon for the next episode of Mr. Stevie's Tall Toy Tales.